A journalist's trap. A Hollywood legend. A response no one saw coming. When a reporter tried to embarrass Clint Eastwood on live TV, she thought she had him cornered. But before he could even respond, a voice cut through the silence. It was Barron Trump. And what he said next left the entire room speechless. Stay till the end, because this story will shock you. If you love powerful moments like this, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications. Let's dive in. When a liberal journalist tries to embarrass Barron Trump's godfather, the iconic Clint Eastwood. During a heated interview, Barron delivers an astonishing and powerful reply. Watch as this intense exchange unfolds, leaving everyone stunned. The air crackled with tension as the bright studio lights illuminated the sleek, polished oak table. Clint Eastwood, a man whose legendary influence had defined Hollywood for generations, sat with an unshakable presence. His lined face remained unreadable. Across from him sat Claire Daniels, a sharpie young journalist. Known for exposing scandals and fueling controversy, she wasn't here for a friendly discussion. She was here to stir the pot. Standing behind Clint, silent but impossible to ignore, was Barron Trump at 19. He loomed over most people, his piercing blue eyes surveying the room with an air of wisdom. Beyond his years, his father, now the 47th President of the United States, had given Clint an unspoken yet crucial role, serving as a trusted mentor to his youngest son. The interview kicked off with pointed, cutting questions. Each one aimed to provoke. Claire leaned in, her voice laced with challenge. "Mr. Eastwood, some say you're outdated, irrelevant. Why cling to a spotlight that no longer shines for you?" Clint's eyes darkened slightly, but before he could speak, Barron cut in. His tone was steady, his words deliberate. "Sometimes the brightest lights are the ones people fail to notice. Be careful not to overlook them." Claire hadn't anticipated Barron. Stepping in, her pen hesitated mid-sentence, and for the first time she faltered. "I wasn't aware you were part of this conversation, Barron," she said, trying to regain control. "I'm not," Barron replied smoothly. "But when someone disrespects a man who has stood the test of time, it's difficult to stay quiet." Clint placed a steady hand on Barron's shoulder, silently acknowledging his words. "The boy's got a point," Clint said, his growly voice slicing through the tension. "Let's focus on the real story here, not just a flashy headline," Barron said firmly. But Claire wasn't about to let the opportunity slip away. "You talk about respect, Barron, yet your father's presidency has been one of the most divisive in history. What makes you think you have the authority to discuss legacy and integrity?" Barron's jaw tightened, but he didn't waver. "I speak because I've lived through it," he replied without hesitation, "and because I've learned from men like Clint, people who earned their place in history, not by bringing others down, but by standing firm in their own truth." Claire leaned back, observing him closely. The young Trump wasn't just an echo of his father, he was something different. As the interview progressed, Claire shifted her approach, intent on uncovering what she believed were hidden weaknesses. "Mr. Eastwood, there are whispers that you've used your influence to protect the Trump family. Do you have a response to that?" Clint's gaze darkened. "Rumors are like shadows, harmless until you choose to give them weight. I don't entertain gossip, ma'am." But Claire wasn't finished. "And Barron, what about you? Living under the weight of your father's presidency must be overwhelming. How do you handle always being seen as just Donald Trump's son?" A heavy silence filled the room for the first time. Barron's mask of composure crashed, his voice, steady yet layered with raw emotion, cut through the tense air. "I'm more than just my last name. People like Clint have shown me that a legacy isn't something you inherit, it's something you earn. You want a headline? Write this down. Respect isn't given, it's proved." The air in the room thickened. Barron's words settling like a storm on the horizon. Claire's hand trembled slightly as she scribbled her notes. The sound of the clock on the wall ticked louder than before. Something had shifted, and everyone in the room could feel it. Then the interview took a sharper turn. Claire Daniels, fueled by the pressure to deliver a career-defining story, leaned in her tone, cutting and unrelenting. Clint, some have called you the guardian of a highly controversial family. What do you say to that? Is that a title you wear with pride, or do you see it as a weight on your shoulders? Clint's face remained expressionless, yet for a brief moment something flickered in his eyes, a deeply buried pain, before he could respond. Barron's voice cut through the silence, once more steady but firm. Is it truly controversial to stand by those you care about, or is it just easier to attack what you don't understand? Claire arched an eyebrow. So you're admitting there's controversy, Barron? He didn't waver. The controversy isn't in the truth, it's in how people distort it. Clint's loyalty isn't a burden, it's proof of his integrity. The air in the room became almost unbearable. Even the security personnel stationed at the doors shifted uneasily for the first time. Claire seemed to falter. The young man before her wasn't just defending Clint. He was dismantling every attempt she made to provoke him, but Claire wasn't finished. She was only getting started. As the cameras continued rolling, she reached into her bag and pulled out a worn file, its edges frayed from years of use. Mr. Eastwood, she began, her tone icy. There are murmurs about an incident from your past, a choice that might have put lives at risk. Care to respond? Clint's jaw clenched. A heavy silence settled over the room, thick with anticipation. Barron's eyes flicked toward Clint, seeing his usually unshakable godfather caught in a rare moment of vulnerability. That's enough, Barron said, his voice low but commanding. Claire smirked. What's wrong? Barron, afraid the truth might shatter your perfect view of him. Barron rose to his feet, his towering figure casting a long shadow across the room. The truth doesn't intimidate me, he said, but your obsession with tearing people apart. Does. You want a story? How about the one where Clint saved my life? Twice the room went still. Claire hesitated, momentarily thrown off guard. He saved your life, she echoed, skepticism lacing her words. Yes, Barron said, his voice thick with emotion, but that doesn't matter to you, does it? You'd rather reopen old wounds than acknowledge the man who has been my rock in a world that's anything but stable. The weight of Barron's words filled the room, thick and heavy. For a brief moment, Claire was silent, her confidence faltering. What do you mean? Clint saved your life? She finally asked, her voice now quieter, less certain. Barron's gaze hardened, but beneath it there was a flicker of pain. When my father was on the campaign trail, something happened. A legitimate threat was made against me. Clint was the one who stepped up. He protected me when no one else could. Claire's pen hovered over her notepad, her hands trembling ever so slightly. Why has no one ever heard this story before? Because Clint doesn't do things for attention, Barron replied. He doesn't need recognition from the world. He simply does what's right, even when no one is looking. For the first time, Clint, who had remained silent, spoke up. I'm no hero, Barron. I just did what anyone else would have done. Barron shook his head. Not anyone. Only someone like you. The room went completely still, except for the quiet hum of the recording equipment. Claire looked down, her usual confidence unraveling. For the first time, she seemed to grasp the depth of the story unfolding before her. The tension was suffocating until Barron's voice shattered the silence. Once more, you want the truth, Claire? Here it is. When I was 15, a real incredible threat was made against my life at my father's campaign rally in Texas. It wasn't just a false alarm. It was real, and when everything went south, Clint Eastwood was the one who took action. Claire's pen lingered above the paper, but her fingers trembled. What happened? She whispered, her curiosity now outweighing her original intentions. Barron's eyes grew distant, as if he were back in that moment. I was backstage waiting to see my father. Suddenly, security alarms blared and chaos erupted. A man with a weapon broke through the barriers. My security team hesitated. Clint. Didn't the room fell into a heavy, uneasy silence. Clint sat in silence, his jaw clenched tightly. I did what anyone with the right experience would do, he said, his voice low but firm. I acted. That's all. Barron's voice wavered. You didn't just act. You put your life on the line for me. You saved me, and that's why I won't sit here and let anyone tear you down. Tears filled the eyes of those in the room, including Claire. She leaned back in her chair, momentarily speechless. The Clint Eastwood she had assumed she knew was being replaced by a man whose courage she couldn't ignore. Why hasn't this story been told? She asked, her voice quieter. Now Clint gave a small shrug, his weathered face revealing the weight of time. Because it wasn't about me. It was about protecting Barron. Barron turned to Claire, his voice steady but thick with emotion. Do you know what it's like to owe someone your life, to realize that if they hadn't been there, you might not be here at all? It's a burden. Claire, a beautiful, humbling burden. Claire blinked rapidly, her polished, professional demeanor slipping. I didn't know, she admitted in a murmur, because you never asked. Barron responded. You came here with a story. You wanted to tell you were ready to paint Clint as something he's not, but the truth is, he's more than you could ever imagine. The silence that followed was heavy, yet not uncomfortable. It carried weight, respect, contemplation, and something Claire hadn't anticipated: admiration. The energy in the room shifted. Claire looked at Clint, then at Barron before glancing down at her notepad. Her carefully prepared questions suddenly felt meaningless. Barron, she said thoughtfully, why do you defend Clint so fiercely? It's not just about that one moment, is it? Barron hesitated, his eyes glistening. No, it's not. Clint isn't just my godfather, he's my mentor. Claire sighed. When my father was busy running the country, Clint was the one who taught me what it means to be a man. Clint exhaled, leaning back in his chair. I just did what I believe was right. Barron needed someone, and I just happened to be there. Claire lowered her gaze, guilt settling over her. I think I came here intending to tear you down because I didn't understand. I assumed you were just another celebrity trying to stay relevant, but now I realize how wrong I was. Barron gave a small nod. We all make mistakes, Claire. What matters is what we do once we know the truth. For the first time, Claire seemed at a loss for words. The confrontation she had planned was slipping away, replaced by something far more meaningful. As the interview paused for a short break, Barron stepped aside, taking a moment to collect himself. His security team, always on alert, maintained their distance but remained attentive in the corner of the room. Claire's eyes landed on a small leather briefcase. It belonged to Clint. May I? She gestured toward it. Clint hesitated before giving a slight nod. Go ahead. There's nothing inside. I'm ashamed of. Claire carefully unlatched the case and pulled out an old folded letter. The paper was worn and yellowed with time, the handwriting unsteady yet familiar. As she read, her expression softened. It was addressed to Clint, written by Barron years ago. The words spoke of gratitude of a young boy's, deep admiration for a man who had stepped into his life during uncertain times. You kept. This cleric voice was barely above a whisper. Clint nodded. It reminds me why I do what I do. It's not about cameras or recognition. It's about being there when it truly counts. Barron returned, noticing the letter in Claire's hands. For a brief moment, his guarded expression faded, replaced by a warm smile. He's always kept it. Barron said, that's Clint, always holding on to reminders of what really matters. As the camera started, rolling again, Claire's demeanor shifted, her voice softer. Clint. She began, why did you choose to stay close to the Trump family, knowing the scrutiny that would come with it? Clint leaned forward, his gaze Unwavering because loyalty isn't conditional. It's not about agreeing with every decision or avoiding criticism. It's about standing by the people who have placed their trust in you, even when it's difficult. Barron, continued Clint, taught me that true loyalty is rare. It's not about what's easy, it's about commitment. When my father took the oath of office, Clint was one of the first to stand with him. Not because he had to, but because he believed in us. Claire's eyes shone as she quickly jotted down notes. Barron, do you ever feel the weight of the legacy you carry? Barron hesitated, his voice unsteady. Every single day. But I've realized that legacies aren't just passed down. They're built. Clint has shown me what it means to stand firm, even when the world is watching, waiting for you to stumble. The raw ocean and Barron's words filled the room with silence for the first time. Claire understood this wasn't just about politics or headlines, it was about something deeper. The interview was drawing to a close, but Claire wasn't ready to end it just yet. She looked at Barron, her voice barely above a whisper. If you could say one thing to Clint right now, what would it be? Barron turned to Clint, his eyes glistening with tears. Thank you for everything, for being there when I needed you most, for showing me what true courage looks like, even when it isn't easy. Clint, usually composed, swallowed hard. You don't have to. Thank me, kid. You've got a strength in you that the world hasn't even begun to recognize. Claire clearly moved, closed her notebook. I came here searching for flaws, for a story that would challenge a legacy. But what I found was something entirely unexpected. A bond that can't be broken, a story that deserves to be told. As the cameras powered down, an overwhelming silence settled over the room. Claire rose from her seat, extending a hand to Clint. Thank you for showing me what true strength really looks like. Barron and Clint exchanged a knowing glance, their connection unshaken. They had weathered the storm, and soon the world would see the truth. As the day's interview came to a close, Claire remained behind, unable to shake the weight of what she had uncovered. The bond between Clint and Barron had not only defied her expectations, but had profoundly moved her. That evening, Barron sat in the private quarters of the White House. His security details, stationed just outside Clint, joined him, his presence offering quiet reassurance. Do you ever regret stepping into my life? Barron asked suddenly, his voice thick with emotion. Clint's gaze softened. Not for a second. You needed someone, and I needed purpose. Life has a strange way of bringing people together at just the right moment. Barron hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out an old photograph. It was a candid shot of Clint shielding him during that fateful rally years ago. I carry this with me. Barron admitted, it reminds me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to act despite it. Clint rested a hand on Barron's shoulder. And you've got plenty of courage. Kid, more than most men I've ever met. Just outside the door, unseen, Claire watched in silence, her heart conflicted. The story she had set out to tell had become something far deeper than she ever anticipated. The following day, Claire approached Barron's security team with an unusual request. I need one more interview, she said, but this time it's not for a headline, it's for them. When Barron heard her request, he hesitated. Why? Claire met his gaze. Because the world deserves to know the truth. Not just about Clint, but about you, about everything you've both endured and overcome. After a long moment of silence, Barron gave a slow nod. All right, but no scripts, no rehearsed questions, just honesty. The interview was set in the East Wing, with Clint seated beside Barron. Claire turned to face the camera and spoke directly. Sometimes we go into a story believing we understand the narrative, but the truth is often far more powerful than we ever imagined. As Clint and Barron shared their personal journeys, the atmosphere in the room became increasingly emotional. Clint spoke of sacrifice, of the toll his choices had taken on his life, and of the immense pride he felt, watching Barron grow into a man of character and honor. By the time the interview concluded, there wasn't a single dry eye in the room. Even Barron's usually stoic security team appeared visibly moved that evening. The interview aired and the response was immediate. Social media erupted with admiration for Clint's courage and Barron's humility. People from all backgrounds shared their own stories, deeply touched by the powerful connection between the two men. Barron's phone buzzed, constantly with messages of encouragement. "I wasn't expecting this," he confessed to Clint. Clint chuckled. "People recognize honesty, Barron, and that's what they saw." Two people being real. Meanwhile, Claire sat in her office, overwhelmed by the flood of emails and phone calls pouring in. Many expressed gratitude for shining a light on a story that wasn't about politics or status, but about genuine human connection. That night, Barron and Clint sat together on the White House balcony, watching the sun dip below the horizon. "You know," Barron said for the first time in a long time, "I feel like people see me for who I really am, not just the president's son." Clint smiled, "And that's more valuable than anything else." The world couldn't stop talking about the interview everywhere. Barron and Clint went. They were met with admiration and respect, but beneath all the praise, trouble was brewing. A private investigator hired by a competing network dredged up an old, unproven rumor about Clint. Though baseless, the story quickly spread. The headlines were "Ruthless Clint Eastwood, a hero or a fraud." Barron was furious. Why can't they just leave him alone? He's done nothing but serve this country with honor. Clint, as calm as ever, simply shrugged. "The truth has a way of revealing itself, Barron. Let them say what they want." But Barron refused to stay silent. That evening, he recorded a video message standing before the White House. He spoke directly to the nation. "I know exactly what Clint Eastwood represents: loyalty, integrity, and courage. Anyone who doubts that simply doesn't know him like I do, and they never will." Within hours, the video spread like wildfire. Millions rallied behind Barron's words, standing up for Clint and denouncing the baseless attack. For the first time, Clint allowed his emotions to show. "Thank you, Barron, you've done more for me than I ever expected." Despite the controversy, Clint remained committed to his original plan: a quiet evening with Barron at a charity gala. The event was dedicated to honoring veterans, a cause Clint held dear. As they stepped into the grand hall, applause erupted, but this time it wasn't for the president's son or the iconic actor. It was for the connection they shared during his speech. Clint addressed the audience. "I've been given many titles in my life, but the one I'm most proud of is Godfather. Barron isn't just the president's son, he's a young man who symbolizes the future, and if my presence in his life has made even the slightest impact, then I've done my part." Tears welled in Barron's eyes as he stepped up to the microphone. "Clint has been my foundation. He's shown me what it means to stay strong. Even when the world tries to tear you down tonight, I want to dedicate this moment to him." The crowd rose to their feet, applause filling the hall. Even Claire, seated among them, wiped away tears. The week's events had come to an end, but their significance would endure as Barron and Clint shared one final quiet moment. The depth of their bond became unmistakable. "Clint," Barron said softly, "I don't know what I would have done without you." Clint smiled, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You're stronger than you realize, Barron, and no matter what happens, I'll always be here for you." As they embraced, the cameras captured the moment, a lasting testament to their unbreakable bond. All across the country, people watched, their eyes welling with tears at the genuine connection between them. That night, Barron sat alone on the balcony, gazing out over the Washington, D.C. skyline. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the photograph. He always carried the one of Clint, shielding him all those years ago. "Thank you," he murmured. By morning, the headlines painted a powerful picture, a bond beyond politics. Clint Eastwood and Barron Trump inspire a nation. And with that, this remarkable journey came to an end. Some moments aren't just conversations, they're lessons in courage, respect, and truth. Barron Trump didn't just defend Clint Eastwood, he reminded the world that loyalty and integrity still matter. This story proves that standing up for what's right is never out of style, and sometimes the people we least expect have the most powerful voices. If this story inspired you, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications. Let's keep sharing stories that matter. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay true, and see you in the next video.